Where there are wars, there will be crows, the carrion fanciers, and ravens too, the warbirds, the eyeball gourmands, and vultures, the holy birds of yore, old connoisseurs of rot. Margaret Atwood. This is part 2 of Change Demons vs. War Demons from one-page rules in a painting challenge, and in this one, it'll be the Change Demons' turn to go to war. I love these feathered magical mischief makers, but could their kinda crazy turn them into beasts who desire only blood? Well, I've got one of the basic warriors here that's gonna be seeing red to find out for us. Okay, honesty time. If I was painting this for a competition, I would probably absolutely paint each feather individually. But as this is just a weekend project, I don't have time for that, and wouldn't expect most of you to have time for that. The whole point of these birds is to have an army of them. So what I'm trying to say is, I want to do a good job, but I want to be lazy about it. So I think the best course of action for this guy's feathers is going to be some ZENITHAL, but like a really advanced version of a ZENITHAL. And it starts with the base coat. What? Didn't I just say I'm doing a ZENITHAL? Yes, I did, but that actually comes later. First things first though is going to be giving our angry burb friend here a nice coat of pure red oxide. And just to be a little more approachable about this, I'm going to show you how to do it with both a brush and an airbrush, though for base coats that's easy enough. Put it on with a brush or put it on with an airbrush. Either way, red oxide is pretty opaque and will make an even coat with either. Now I'll get to the ZENITHAL part of the project, and just like it'd be done over black, we're going over this red with a white. For the brush method, it'll be a dry brush, so don't use a good brush for this. Get some thinned white into the bristles and then use some paper towel to really wipe it away. I find probably the easiest way to do this is to just pinch it between the fingers and pull it out. Check on the thumb that it's dry enough and get going. Like a ZENITHAL, I want to keep this to the topmost areas, so don't bother with the underarms or legs and go extra coverage on the prominent places like knees. For the airbrush method, well, that's more like a normal ZENITHAL. Find the right light angle and just spray. The important part here is we have a nice white with some of the dark red showing through in the shadows. So it doesn't matter too much if it's smooth or rough between the two methods, just that it's dark and light. That takes care of the whites, but what about the blacks? Those feathers have a lot of detail that I'd love to bring back, so it's wash time. And because I want this to really sit in the recesses while avoiding most of the rest, I'm going to make it thinner than usual. So usually it's 1 drop thinner to 1 drop medium. I'm just going with mostly thinner and just a bit of matte medium to keep things matte. Then add some carbon black and a bit of the red oxide again to keep it from being a perfect black. When applying by brush, keep it thin. We just want to fill the details of the feathers. It might take a few coats to do, but we'd rather do that than fill in large areas. For the airbrush, soak the model in the wash, but then use some of the air to make sure it's not pooling anywhere on the brighter surfaces. So what we have here now is what I'm going to call an advanced ZENITHAL. We got some light spots, some medium color spots, and dark recesses, which means since this is the ZENITHAL, I haven't actually started painting yet. Naturally, that means I have to bring color into the equation, and seeing as how this boy's all about war, that of course means red. But he's still a being of change, so I want to get more than just red in there, which is why I've also got yellow, orange, magenta, and purple on the palette, which I'm going to use to make multiple mixes. With the magenta and purple, I'm going to mix each of them with some red, so they only have a subtle shift from red instead of a giant leap around the color wheel. The yellow I'm going to mix into the orange, and the orange gets a little bit of red itself too. I don't want him to look like fire, but I don't want a solid red block either. I'm going to start with the darkest mix, which was the purple and the red together, also starting with the airbrush. I'll be aiming the spray for this against the darkest parts where his feathers connect to other things, like the butt feathers, the shoulder, and armpits. I'll be leaving the feet alone for now, that comes later. Next color will be the pure red. This is going to cover most of all the other feathers, except those on his kneecaps, the elbows, and his crest. It looks like it's going to cover up a lot of the details from the ZENITHAL, but this is red we're talking about. When it dries, all that lovely detail will shine right through. I also get to admit a mistake here. I forgot to record the first time, so I had to respray the elbows and kneecaps with some white, but technically these should still have been white from when I avoided them. Now I'm just using the magenta red to pick out those spots, so that the only thing avoided so far has been the feet. And that's because I want to get those with more bird feet colors. So this is what the orange mixes were for. Starting with the darker orange I mixed into the red, just getting this along the length of the talon, but not including the top of the toes. The sides are fine to get though, since those would get more ambient occlusion from the ground. The final color is the yellow topped up with orange. This one just getting the front of the claws, so it doesn't take too much and ends up being quite bright still in the end, just not as bright as it would be for fire, so it doesn't look like he's a walking flame. For the brush method, most of these colors are transparent enough that they can go right on top and a lot of the detail would still show through. But just in case, I'm going to use a trick with some thicker medium. By diluting the paint into this, it keeps the consistency but makes it much more transparent, so that when it gets brushed onto the model, it behaves the exact opposite of a wash. Instead of trying to fill the gaps, it sits evenly on the surface. So I won't show all the colors here, but otherwise it's the same locations and colors as it would have been with the airbrush. I think the best complementary cloth color I can give this guy is something that will allow his feathers and all those hues to stand out. So I'm going back to the beginning, at least my first base layer anyway, with the red oxide, but this time mixing in quite a bit of black to darken it up right off the bat. This is going to be my base coat for all the hanging fabrics, but since I'm here, I might as well give all the remaining gray a base coat too, since my next few colors will all be a bit more darker anyway. And to counter all the pretty feather colors, I think the cloth is just going to have to be dull. So into my main base mix, I'm just going to add some white to make a desaturated red oxide. Using the tip of the brush, I'll start to stipple this around the folds of the cloth, starting in a light point and fading it along the way. I want a broken texture to really help separate them out. This is already a little bit too bright for me, but I'm going to make sure those sharp highlights are in there by adding some more white and stippling in just the brightest points along all the cloth sections. I'll fix the brightness issue right after. To fix the brightness, I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the original ZENITHAL brush method. Use some of the oxide and a bit of black with a lot of the medium. When brushing it on the model, I'll start just a bit outside the lightest point on the fabric and pull it away from that center to the shadows. That way, I still have some of the really bright spots, but not in an overpowering way. Last thing is just going to be getting more contrast, but since I don't want light, it means I have to go the other way. And with a medium thinned, almost pure black with just a bit of red oxide still, I'll brush this into the folds of the cloth. While a wash would work too, aiming for the folds, it'll just retain a bit more of the dark contrast by not darkening everything. The silly part is this doesn't look like I've actually done much of anything, but I think that will change again when I fill in the rest of the colors so that the cloth isn't surrounded by the same color. I'm thinking a good harmonious color for a metallic with the reds is going to be something coppery. I like this old copper from scale 75, but it's a bit too bright to start with, so I'm going dark first with this decayed metal, but also mixing in some more of that red oxide that was still there. Using this base, I'll get the metal started on all the plating, which on this burb is actually quite a lot. With the old copper out on the palette, I'm going to grab a smaller brush, but also some more of that thicker medium used before, because I want to have some control with this, but not quite as saturated with the metal. I'm going to create area highlights with it, filling in the most pronounced part of the armor wherever I am, and then use the side of the brush will extend that further along the edges. I want to bring some shadows into the edges of the armor, but I feel like the red oxide is going to make it more dusty than shaded, so it's up to my old friend Inks. Using the red and black to make a dark red along with some medium and thinner to give me a simple wash, which I'll use to fill in all the lines and recesses all over this ornate armor. To add the last bit of bling to the copper, I want to use some of this pure copper, which was a bit stopped up, so vomited a bit more than I needed onto the palette. Just pure from the bottle with my small brush again though. This time picking out just tiny edges, and well, big edges too, basically any edge that needs to shine and stand out, following the light lines I was highlighting up before the wash. To finish all the little details, I just hit his beak with a black and magenta gradient, his claws with just a bone color mixed into the base colors, and the gems and eyes got a phthalo blue fill and glow, just to reflect his change demon origins. The sword I experimented with a bit, and I'm not sure if I like the result of that or not, but what I do like about this scheme is just how much adding all those different hues to the red really made him look more colorful, but in a raged berserker kind of way. And the copper turned out exactly as I hoped with the red, and they harmonize wonderfully together. Also, I want to take this time to remind everyone, I've made a Discord channel. Just a small place to post pictures, ask for help, and offer advice. Plus discuss your own adventures with miniatures. You can find the link in the description below. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one, or just other fun things to do with painting miniatures. And until next time, enjoy your own painting journey.